My name's Dead Palette. I have over 4,000 hours on Team Fortress 2, and I like reading creepy stories. So we're going to read a creepy story about Team Fortress 2 entitled Team Fortress 2 Play Dead. I don't know what the story is about. It has a red shaded image of a scout from Team Fortress 2 on it. I've since fallen out with Team Fortress 2. I don't like the design choices that they really made and the direction that the game went. So I want to take a trip down memory lane and see what this is all about. So let's get right into it. I'd like to share an experience I had with a game of Team Fortress 2. It was about 9 p.m. on a Monday. I think 2 weeks ago, I had decided to play a multiplayer match on TF2, as opposed to a single-player match on Team Fortress 2. I signed on and started up the automatic server select for play modes. So far we have very stilted words, structure, things that don't need to be explained. A lot of specifics that make me feel like this is someone's blog, which in upon itself wouldn't be a bad thing, but I think it's a little too casual. It's treating me like I know this person and I don't know this person, if that makes any sense. I felt like playing Capture the Flag, so I selected that option. My computer lagged a bit while it was searching for a server, which isn't abnormal for me as my laptop is fairly distant from my router. But eventually it found one. I have only been playing TF2 since a little after it became free, so I don't have a very big server history, nor experience with server mods or servers in general. But something seemed rather odd about this particular server. Okay, so now we're starting to get a time frame. This is shortly after Team Fortress 2 became free to play, and after Team Fortress 2 became free to play, it was very unfun for me for a very long period of time, because it was just this influx, this deluge of new players who have no idea what they were doing, and the end result was just going around and backstabbing people and being accused of being a hacker because no one knew what they were doing, and rather than introduce some sort of ranked mode or a way to hurdle all of the new players into one place, they just had to infiltrate all the games with people who have thousands of hours in the game. It was a great time. Bearing that time frame in mind, this person saying that they had very little server history, nor experience with server mods or servers in general. Like, we get the point. You're kind of repeating yourself, and this is the first paragraph of the story. You really need to put something that is foreshadowing at the beginning. Oftentimes that could end up being front-loading, or it could be boring at the beginning. So you gotta find that happy balance in between where you give us a little bit of information as to what's going on. And this, I'd like to share an experience I had with a game of Team Fortress 2. I think that that's a decent beginning, but maybe I would just put a little more characterization into it. I had an odd experience with Team Fortress 2, something like that. Say it's odd, strange, just anything. Something's making me question whether I want to keep playing Team Fortress 2, or has anyone else had this experience? Stuff along those lines. So we're going to a particularly odd server. I don't know. I've been to many odd servers. But then again, I have more experience than this person. So once I gained access to the server, the loading screen came up with a bar on the bottom right. As the bar got to about 70%, it jittered backwards and paused. It started going back and forth between 45 and 60%. That's weird because they don't have like an exact number on there. It's just like little bars indicating how far it is. The game froze after a few moments and I decided to force quit the game. That's because you were loading a weird server-side mod. That's not uncommon. It's quite frequent. You deal with that all the time. If you're trying to go to one of those goofy servers Just don't go to those dumb, goofy servers with weird server-side mods. I went to get something to eat and came back to the game, started it up, and decided to play from my server history. I noticed a few new servers added to the list. CTF, Playdead 905, or something along that line. That's very specific. Something along those lines. Like, no, that's a very specific thing. After the events I'm about to explain, the server disappeared from my list. So I'm going on plain memory here. I tried the server and, similar to before, the load bar jittered a bit. However, it managed to complete this time. There's nothing spectacular about this. We're 3 paragraphs in, and a lot of very wordy sentences have been said. All that's been said is, I went to a server with very... I started playing after it went free to play, and I went to a server with really dumb server mods that were messing up my computer and freezing it. Alright, usually when you enter a custom server, there will be some sort of splash page to welcome you to the server and advertise their site or briefly explain the rules. So, here we're getting into the classic creepypasta problem of, are you explaining the fandom? Are you assuming that they don't have, the reader doesn't have familiarity with the fandom or the subject in mind? Or are you deciding that they do know about it and just going to go past it? Because you've been explaining like the loading bar and how servers work and server history and all of these things that anyone who's played Team Fortress 2 knows. And then you're also explaining the splash screen at the beginning, which, again, people, it's a little, confusing. You're assuming people know about the server stuff, assuming that they don't know about the splash screen. That's weird. In the case of this server, the entire splash screen was blank. That's pretty normal. There was nothing on it. I started to think something was wrong with my graphics card. With all the strange things that was happening, I decided to continue on. I started to think something was wrong with my graphics card with all the strange things that was happening, but I decided to continue on. Okay, that's me being dumb. The game loaded. I selected Pyro as my class, and I entered 2Fort. 2Fort is an abomination. 2Fort is the worst map in Team Fortress 2. CTF is the worst mode in Team Fortress 2, and this is where all the new players congregate. Or new players congregate there, but they will overflow into servers where people are having real games, unfortunately. For those of you who have never played Team Fortress 2, here is a brief explanation. Okay, you gotta pick a side. Are we explaining the story? Explaining how Team Fortress 2 works, or not? It's a team-based online player FPS game, multiplayer FPS game, and in this particular Capture the Flag mode, map 2Fort, you have 2 fairly large mills separated by a little lagoon and a bridge, and an underground network of pipes that you can enter. The objective is to, obviously, capture the opponent's flag and return it to your base. For this server, there were 2 teams of 6. Upon my joining, both teams became full. Everything that was described there is so commonplace in shooting games. Anyone who's reading this knows about this. None of that was necessary. That entire paragraph. The game was already mid-progress, and everything was working normally. Our team, Blue, had already scored 1 point and needed 2 more to win the game. The red team had 0 points. This is just describing someone's, afternoon. Is something scary about to happen? Something weird, unsettling? This particular game didn't have a time limit, and we seemed to be going back and forth for about 14 minutes with little to no progress. Yeah, that's Capture the Flag for you. Occasionally, members from our team would type angry messages to the opposing team accusing them of being cheap by having 4 engineers in their flag room with turrets, making it almost impossible to get their flag and making the game seem endless. Someone go medic and demo man or soldier and Uber your way in there. It's not rocket science. This is why you're stuck in capture the flag. Up until now, things had seemed relatively normal. Yeah, they did. Until I started noticing that for about 5 minutes, I've been going around the level and I had not seen a single one of my team members, nor any other players from the other team. It took you 5 minutes to realize that? A little slow on the uptake. People were still talking, however, so it kind of took a while for it to sink in that I hadn't seen anyone at all for over 5 minutes. I thought that it had to be some sort of lag problem, so I asked the other players if they were having the same issue, and the general response was, nope. But one player said that they haven't seen me for a little bit either. Hadn't seen anyone for a little bit either. About 6 more minutes passed, and I started to grow pretty bored. Yeah, there you go. I decided to make one more round throughout the level before I would find another server. I left our fort and fell into the lagoon in the middle and proceeded to enter the red team's pipe network. After the little room underground in the middle of the tunnel, there was a really long pipe that led to a staircase going up into the base at the end. I noticed an enemy scout was standing there, but he wasn't moving, just standing there with his bat out and staring at me. So the scout has a bat. He's holding it out above his head. A strange form of relief swept over me that the game started to work again, and I charged at him and began to shoot him with my flare gun. The shot went right through him, and when I approached, he disappeared completely. Really bad lag, I thought to myself. I ascended the staircase. As I entered the base, a strange static sound started to replace the other game sounds. I made my way throughout their base, and as I got closer to the flag room, the static got louder and louder until I couldn't hear anything else in the game at all. This is when things started to get really weird. Alright. Nothing is happening, guys. Just like in the game, nothing is happening here. And I'm starting, this is feeling just like someone dicking around on an empty server of Team Fortress 2. They're throwing in the static to kind of up the ante, but it feels kind of shallow at that point because we haven't gotten any hint of anything else going wrong. It's basically just static, and he can't find anyone else. Maybe this person is on one of those servers where there's bots, and like the bots are just like programmed to say stuff to make it seem like it's a populated server. I don't know. I asked if anyone else heard the static, and I did not receive any reply. No one's has said a word since I saw the enemy scout in the pipe tunnel. There's also just a lot of time in the story being devoted to explaining the map to fort, which is, I don't know the purpose of that. I managed to get to the room adjacent to the flag room, with 2 halls going into it. And I could hear some sort of murmuring behind the static, so there's going to be something in the flag room. As I went down one of the halls and turned the corner, I noticed that there was no flag room. It was just plain black, like the hall leaded into the game's void, or all the textures and lighting were reduced to 100% black. I shot a couple of times and all my bullets landed as if there were walls there, so I entered the room anyway. That doesn't make any sense because you have already told us that you don't have a gun, because the pyro can only have a flamethrower, a flare gun, and if you have a flare gun, you don't have a shotgun. So, little plot hole there, you don't have any bullets. I saw the flag and picked it up, and as I turned around to leave, there were no halls. Everything was black. The UI was still up on the screen. It said I had their flag, but there was nothing to the level, and all traces of the level disappeared. I tried again to get an answer after explaining my problem. No response. So the problem you're dealing with here is that you need to upgrade that onboard graphics card on your laptop. I stood in the room, or lack thereof, for about 3 minutes until suddenly... Why? Exit the game! Go. There's so many Team Fortress 2 servers. Why are you sticking around here? Until suddenly the game froze and the game ended. But the message didn't say anyone won or lost, and the announcer's voice was all distorted. The scoreboard was broken. The loading screen quickly came up and it said, downloading Playdead 0090 or something along those lines. Again, very specific for you to say along those lines. It took about 17 minutes to go play another game. There's so many servers out there. Go onto a Skiles server. That seems like your speed. It took about 17 minutes to download. It was a really big file. He's on this server and they're just downloading all kinds of spyware onto his computer. Oh boy. Really big file. When it was finished, the black server screen came up again. I went through the screens and selected Spy. The level loaded to something completely indescribable. I bet you're about to describe it. I tried to save a screenshot, but every picture I tried to get said error, and the screen print didn't work. So that has to be something supernatural if that's not working, because that's not a glitch, that's just supernatural something. The level looked rather black and white and very glitchy. The textures on the wall were kind of like 8-bit blocks, but really distorted. So the game's turning into Minecraft or something. It was almost like playing a 3D version of a static snow screen on a TV. That is a pretty interesting description. I'm going to read that again. Almost like playing a 3D version of a static snow screen on a TV. When you get all the static, playing that's a pretty cool idea in a story that's otherwise not giving us any information. I went through the level and asked everyone, what is this map? But there was no response. I checked the player list and other than my name, everyone else was listed as I am dead 1, I am dead 2, I am dead 3, etc. This is Bubby the Clown levels of telling, I am dead. So you're just playing with ghosts? Oh man, I just read ahead and saw a word. I never encountered anything like this before other than some prank games people made for fun and hacks along the lines of the Majora's Mask one. But this is an online game with what I had thought secure servers. So what I had thought it should be. I decided to give it a few more minutes and explore the level, which was a really large maze of oddly shaped tunnels. Also, there was no sound effects whatsoever. Nothing I did caused the sound. Or can you say it with me at this point? Leave the server, go to another one. There are so many 2-Fort servers out there. You don't need to be on this one. The tunnel had darkness at the end, and it seemed almost endless. As I was walking for at least a minute in one direction with no change to the map, I decided to turn around and go back, thinking the map is glitched. And the moment I turned my camera, I saw the enemy scout I saw earlier. How do you know that it was that exact scout? Why do you know it was that exact Scout? The Scout model would be the same. Did he have like a specific hat? Did he have some unusual hat with like a bunch of dumb particle effects that for some reason cost $300? I turned around and decided, okay. But enemy Scout I saw earlier, except something was very wrong with it. Its eyes were black. His left arm was rather deformed and bent in impossible directions, and his legs reminded me of a crab. So it was a crab spy, but it was a Scout. I almost jumped out of my seat at the sight and typed, "WTF is going on?" hurriedly into the chat, but there was no response. I stood there and stared down at the strange Scout. After several moments, the other players started talking, but all that appeared was corrupted garbage text. The Scout quickly approached me in a sudden, though irregular fashion, and I heard a very, very loud burst of static, and all of a sudden, it kicked me out of the server. Good. Go to another server. I went to check the server, and it was gone from my history. Naturally, I immediately shut off the game, and haven't played it since then. Why? And it wasn't as bad of a game back then. Its design choices made a lot more sense back then. I think it was some sort of prank, but it was pretty creepy, and the game hacks don't usually creep me out. Well, that wasn't very creepy. I don't know why that creeped you out. Update, July 13th, 2011. Ooh, that's a blast from the past. Oh, that's a blast from the past. After posting, I'm feeling old now. After posting this, I decided to play the game again. I went into my server history to find a King of the Hill map, but I noticed that CTF Playdead 905 was back, and this time it had 0 out of 16 players. I went into the server, and, unlike before, it loaded normally without any issue. It was 2fort. You keep spelling 2fort wrong. 2fort is one word. Like when I entered it before, but there were no players on the server. Nothing really seemed out of place, and I walked around the map for a while, finding nothing. The only thing I noticed was that was strange was that I could hear the sound effect glitch out every now and then. When selecting a character, there was static noise that kept repeating, and when I noticed when I went to the tunnel area, I thought I heard footsteps. I shut down the game a few minutes later, and I will never try it another time. Maybe I will be able to get some footage. Written by BlueFalkon, Falcon. So let's read some comments. Time Warps 1, 10 out of 10. Time Warps 1, Putis. Mustang Cobra 1, Putis. Punish Mashed, if you were playing Pyro and you had the flare gun equipped, how did you fire bullets? My thought exactly. Official Puncake, I hate Skunt. So, interesting. This person's pointing out that they spelled blue wrong, because, that's kind of a pedantic thing, like me saying, 2fort is spelled wrong, but blue is spelled without an E in the game. Bearing everything that happened in mind, this story had nothing happen in it, and I can't believe it was as long as it was without anything happening. And I thought my stories had nothing happen in them. So I think that this is a good bit of advice, a very constructive story to talk about, because nothing happens in it, and I think because stories like this are written, people get afraid, and they feel like they need to throw a skeleton at the end, the proverbial skeleton popping out of the closet. So, you can write a story that's very mundane like this, but something needs to happen, and you need to thread the creepiness throughout it, and then have it spike at some point, maybe, but you gotta thread the creepiness throughout it. at the very beginning, we're given a description of the day. It was about 9 p.m. on a Monday 2 weeks ago. We don't need that. That could all be cut out. Describing stuff loading in, we don't need that. It takes so long for us to actually get to the part that's supposed to be creepy, and it happens very suddenly. There's no real build-up. So you need to thread the little bit of creepiness throughout it. You can have a very mundane story and still have it be successful, but you have to have some sort of idea from the outset. And it feels as though this person didn't have an idea from the outset. There's the mention of Strange Scout, which I think is a series of YouTube videos where they just warp the skeleton of the scalp, like the wire skeleton in the programming, and make him move all strange and stuff like that. And it's kind of like this creepy, unsettling David Lynch in a very positive way kind of thing. Technological Team Fortress 2 David Lynch kind of thing. And I think that there's like a slight reference to that. So I hope that out of reading the story, we kind of can get some constructive stuff to pull out of it. See what kind of flaws it's making, and maybe write stories that are in this vein that are more successful. With all of that in mind, I do find it interesting that they kept loading in characters called I Am Dead 1, I Am Dead 2, I Am Dead 3, and then at some point, another character loaded in named Sketchic. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, do make sure to hit that subscribe button and subscribe to the Fear Fiction Podcast, the podcast that I do with my friends Abysme and Slimebeast. We read scary stories, bullshit around, and generally try to critique horror stories that we find online of all stripes. Everything from, Jeff the Killer to weird stories posted on Let's Not Meet that are very clearly fake. Just having a good time. And let me know any weird experiences you've had in Team Fortress 2. I guess.